Good morning, folks. Thank you all for being here. You are attending the Workday Principal Investigators Summary Dashboard webinar, and we are very happy to have all of you here with us this morning. We have invited you here as someone who is likely faculty, tenure track faculty. You may be somebody who has an award or grant that you are currently funding some kind of work on, or you may have some internal funding, startup funds. You may be in a supporting role to one of these people that I've just described. We will be focusing specifically this morning on what the experience of somebody who is in a principal investigator, co-investigator, multiple investigator kind of scenario, what they will be able to see and do in Workday. And this material will be limited specifically to the reporting capabilities. We are not going to be discussing things like buying experience or how to manage personnel. There are plenty of other courses that do that, and materials are available now, and we can help direct you to those. But this one, for our purposes this morning, I just wanted to make it clear what we would be covering today. So, with that said, I also want to point out that this is a recorded session. I assume that you all saw that prompt and accepted that you would continue with it. Thank you very much. We will be making this recording available through Buckeye Learn. As the size of this crowd doesn't make it really possible for us to have a conversation, this is going to be a moderated Q&A. There is a Q&A button at the bottom on your toolbar. We are happy to have your questions. Please be patient with us. We expect to have plenty of them, and we'll do our best to get to all of them, but we know that we will not. And so we will be continuing to follow up after this session with additional materials in the routine emails that you should be receiving about upcoming important dates and materials that are available. With that, I'd like to finally introduce myself and the other presenters. So my name is Eileen Lehman. I am the change manager, organizational change manager, working with the finance team for Enterprise Project. My job here is to help you and to learn about and adapt to the changes that are coming. With me today are speakers Christine Hamble from the Office of Sponsored Programs and Andrea Ward-Ross, who is our grants representative on the Enterprise Project and a critical part of the material that you're going to see today. And Megan is my team member who is with me today to help moderate the Q&A. And so she may be messaging you separately as well. Today's objectives, we want to leave you with some insight into how we got here, what we're doing, and how Workday works. We'd like to review the general configuration. There's some things that are different about how we're going to be working in Workday, and we need to, we have spent a lot of time in the last, it's been a multiple year, 4 years, 5 years of talking about how this all will work. And so you'll see how we've configured this to help you. And this has all been validated by people like yourselves, people in the Office of Sponsored Programs, our colleagues outside of the university who have similar kind of situations, other Workday users and consultants. And then ultimately, by being here today, you get to sample the future user experience. This is going to be an extensive demonstration of the capabilities of Workday. While you will not have your hands on it, we can help you with how to get your hands on it in the near future and when you can expect to see your data there. Some quick reminders Since we have such brief time together, if you'll remove as many distractions as possible. I know it's hard. My phone is turned over, my Outlook is off. I am only Skyping the other members of this presentation team, and I'd ask you to do the same because we'd like to make sure that we can get through your questions in a timely manner. And that is my next request. Please do ask. If we lead you astray or we say something that you don't understand, please let us know. And finally, there will be a survey available. We'd love to hear your feedback. It's important to us and our improvements. So that's our welcome. We have just a couple of agenda items, but they're meaty ones. We will be talking about change, and Christine will help us with how we are enabling change with Workday. She and Andrea will talk a little bit about the Workday basics. And ultimately, Andrea will demonstrate the dashboard for you and talk about general reporting capabilities in Workday. And we'll give you a quick timeline of what to expect next. So it's time for Christine. Christine, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eileen. So good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Christine Handel from OSP. I'm very happy to see so many people are here today because I think that you will be excited to see the demo that Andrea is going to do of what will be available to you as a principal investigator within the new Workday system. So like Eileen said, we've been working on this a very, very long time at this point, and there are some great benefits that the system, the change in system is going to bring to you as a principal investigator when it comes to the administrative parts of the research enterprise, and also to the grant managers and others who help support you. So we'd like to be sure that you know about them and you've seen them. I don't think anybody is particularly excited about being a beginner again, but you know, I think once we get through the transition period and we get used to the new system, it is actually going to be better. So let me say a few words about the kind of improvements that you're going to see in the new environment. So most important, I think, for you to know is that most grants management administration tasks that you would have to do will be in one place. So if it's not in Workday, for example, let's say Buck IRB, you'll be able to link out to that from within Workday. But basically what I mean when I say it will be happening in one place is that there will be no more e-request for requesting purchases and reimbursements. There will be no more e-travel app, no more subaward invoice approval app or separate effort certifications or PET, none of that stuff. Instead, everything's done within Workday. So it's much more integrated and transparent than today. So another gain you're going to have is that data quality is definitely improving. When you work within the Workday system, you will be working with live data. Unlike today, when you look at PI Portal, you're seeing data that is either a day old or as much as a month old if we're talking about personnel charges. So, you know, and today the PI Portal is basically the only place you have to go and look for grants, you know, finance data and grant information. In the future, you are still going to have PI Portal. We're going to leave that up, but you will also have be able to use Workday for that information, and that will be a better data source for you. So as an example of that, where it says commitments refreshed weekly, that means personnel commitments and personnel charges. And you know, today those only get refreshed once a month. So 4 times a month is a really big improvement there. Otherwise, the data is live. You know, if somebody's entered something today, you can see it in there. So procurement and travel will be much more transparent. You know, currently today in PI Portal, you can't see travel commitments or commitments on interdepartmental billings or IDBs. In Workday, travel will be committed, and most IDBs will also be committed. I think the one exception there are animals. Purchases that are invisible today because you can only see them in PI Portal once they make their way through all these feeder systems. That's gone. Everything is initiated in Workday and fulfilled in Workday, so you can see it all as it's happening. Again, much more transparent system, no more waiting for information or things to feed in from the feeder systems that today work with PeopleSoft. There will also be pre-encumbrances. If you really want to drill down, there will be pre-encumbrances to show requested purchases that haven't been fully processed yet into purchase orders. So those were some of the things we heard when we talked to PIs and faculty and administrators and helpers, that that those were some of the things that make grant management difficult. And so we've solved those. But again, you will still be able to use today's PI portal. I think that's going to help smooth through the transition as people learn how to use Workday and get used to it. One change that is not directly related to the Workday system itself, but when you're purchasing on a grant, once we go live today, the request, that somebody makes for you or that you make yourself, either one, today that goes to your college service center and then comes over to OSP. In future, that's going to go directly to OSP if it's on a grant. So that's a big simplification of the process, and that should really save some time. Visibility of an entire research portfolio. What we mean by that is that in Workday, you're going to have a dashboard that Andrea is going to show you, where you can see your OSP grants, and then you can also see non-OSP grants and certain other funds. So what we mean by that, an example of that might be an award that you get that's made with OSU funds, or it could be a startup fund. So whereas today you have to go and ask somebody about those, how much is left, what's the budget, those will all be within Workday and very visible and easily accessible to you in the future. So, and just in general, it is a modern system that is easy to use. So, although many things are changing, not everything is changing. So the general process from proposal to closeout remains the same. You'll still be looking for funding opportunities and submitting proposals. You'll still use the proposal authorization form or the EPA 005 to gather and record the approvals to submit the proposal. Cayuse will still be available, or other sponsor systems like Fastlane that you would use to submit proposals. All of that stays the same. OSP is going to continue to review and submit proposals. Workday is not a pre-award system, just like today's financial system, PeopleSoft, is not a pre-award system. So responsibilities here aren't really changing. It's just the system that it integrates to that is changing. Once an award is funded, OSP will create an award in Workday. The structure is similar to today's PeopleSoft structure. Andrea will show you that, but you'll still have an award, which is sort of the umbrella. That's today's GRT. It'll be an AWD tomorrow. And then underneath an award, you will have at least one, or as many as you need, grants. Grant is the new word for projects. OSP is still going to invoice and receive payments from sponsors and, departments and centers. You will still be responsible for submitting requests for grant purchases and personnel appointments. That doesn't mean you, the PI, have to do it. Just like today, somebody can do that for you. But, you will still be initiating those requests. OSP will make updates, to the awards throughout the life cycle. And just a couple more words about PI portal. The PI portal that you are used to seeing will continue to be active. Just like today, data will feed in every night, overnight, and then so you will still have that time lag that we have today. But it does help smooth the transition, as I had mentioned, because it is familiar to people. People know how to use it. The difference is you will also have the Workday system, where data is live and it is more complete. And I think eventually over time, people will find the reports in Workday to be more useful. And, also we're going to keep improving Workday. We're going to keep creating and developing new reports as we find we need them. So one key takeaway about what is changing is that you as a PI will need to log into Workday. Today, you don't log into PeopleSoft. You log into all these subsidiary applications that have been created, like, for example, to do effort certifications. But once we go live in Workday, you will have to log into Workday to do your administrative tasks, such as effort certifications, payment approvals for subaward invoices. If somebody, you could request to initiate a subaward, or someone can do it for you and you have to approve it. Personnel transfers, all that. This is a big takeaway for you because, you know, unlike today, it's all in one system and you do have to log in and look in your inbox for action items. We had some questions about this after the last presentation we did, and I think there is a way that you can set up getting an email once a day or once a week that would have a listing of all these things you need to do, or you can just log into Workday and look in your inbox. But I think there's a way to set up an email prompt, not necessarily for each and every task, but as sort of a digest. Okay, so that's a big takeaway. Log into Workday. Role assignment in the system. You know, today you know that some process is going on. For example, maybe you're waiting for a subaward to be issued. You don't really know who has it or what step a task is on and who's responsible for it. In the future, you're going to be able to look in Workday and see all of those things. So the workflow for a process will be within the system, and you'll be able to see what role or person needs to complete the next step. So there's a lot of increased transparency with it being one integrated system. You can see which step a process is in. You can see who's responsible. It's a lot more visibility for everyone into the, you know, the process steps. Tracking of waived and recovered, unrecovered F&A. We'll now be able to report on unrecovered. That's when the sponsor will not allow us to charge our full rate, and waived F&A. That is when the sponsor would allow us to charge our full rate, but we have voluntarily are charging less than our full rate. So we'll be able to kind of keep track of that in the future. Spend will be initiated in Workday. As I said before, you don't go into all these different systems. Everything starts and completes within Workday. And funds and internal grants, I mentioned before already that, you know, if you had a startup fund and you're wondering how much have I spent, how much is left, you're going to be able to look in your dashboard, your PI dashboard, and you'll be able to see all of this information. Notifications and workflow routing, that routing of items, that's the point I've made before about how the entire process is in one system and it's transparent. You can see who's doing what. Settle expenses before billing. You know, what that means is that expenses must be settled before an invoice can be generated to bill a sponsor for a cost that is incurred. What this means to you, probably not much, except if the transaction requires your approval first. An example of that would be a subaward invoice. In the future, we are not going to be able to bill for it until all the steps are completed, which includes your approval. You might not realize this, but today we go ahead and we draw down the funds, we bill and get the funds, and then we can adjust it later if there's a problem. We're not going to be able to do that. And what that means for you is that your approval is necessary before we're going to be able to get the money from the sponsor to cover that subaward invoice. Not a big deal unless it's getting towards the end of an award or a budget period. So that's a significant change, again, related to the idea that you're going to have to log into Workday. I say going to have to, but actually it is a simplification. Everything is there in one place. One of the big changes is terminology. It's hard to get used to. I mean, we've been using the same system for so long now, but an award in Workday is still an award. An award in PeopleSoft is still an award in Workday. But what we think of today when we think of projects, those are called grants in Workday. I think that's probably the key one that's going to throw us all for a while, throw us for a loop for a while. Budgets in Workday are called plans. That's not just a grants thing, that's across the board. Budgets are plans. Some of the other ones you may or may not be familiar with. A direct retro distribution is a payroll accounting adjustment. I think that's an improvement because it really is more like, it is called more like what it is, a payroll accounting adjustment. Authorized amount, award reporting amount. I mean, you can see them here, but I think the ones that really impact us the most are the project and grant and budget and plan. So with that, I would like Andrea, I'm going to boot you over to Andrea so she can actually show you some of these things.
Thanks, Christine. I'm Andrea Ward-Ross. I'm the Grants Business Process Lead on the Enterprise Project. Glad to see so many of you here today. We know how precious your time is and glad you could spend some with us. So on the slide you have in front of you, we have a few words about security. It's not something you'll have to concern yourself with a lot, but it's very different than PeopleSoft security, so thought we would point a couple of things out. Um, Security roles in Workday are very different than PeopleSoft in that they're assigned to a role rather or a position rather than an individual, which means that we're going to be able to bring some standardization into what people can see. So as a faculty member, if your position is professor, you would have very similar roles across the board. So we just wanted to put a few words out there about what security is. And if you look at your own security once you're in Workday, you're going to see a number of different roles assigned to you. We have specialist roles and analyst roles. And specialist roles I like to think of as doers, and analyst roles are more viewers. You're going to have a lot of view capability in Workday that you do not have right now. So it's going to be a big change, but I think it's one that you're going to enjoy. Next slide, please. So the role assignments are going to impact a number of things. Workflow routing. As we mentioned, you will be in some approval flows like subaward invoices. So the roles will help us with that. Also reporting. Reporting is the big thing that we are using roles for faculty. Next slide, please. This is the last thing I'm going to show you before we move into the demonstration of the dashboard. Not a lot is changing in the way that awards are structured in Workday versus how they are in PeopleSoft. So as Christine alluded to, it's very much the same. An award remains an award in Workday, and that is a GRT number today. And that really is the umbrella under which we have a number of other things. So award lines are very much like contract lines. And you can have a lot of award lines under one award. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship. But with each award line, we can only have one grant. And the grant value is the value that you're going to use to spend on your grants. So one award line equals one grant, but we can have many under one award. Why would we do that? So let's have an example where grant A would be your core grant. You've gotten an award from the National Science Foundation. You're going to do most of your spending here, most of your work. Grant B, maybe you have fabricated equipment, and we need to track that differently so that we can tag the equipment appropriately and we can give it the proper F&A treatment. And maybe Grant C is a restricted supplement, maybe an REU, research expenditures for undergraduates. So that's why we would have multiple grants under an award, just one example. All right, well, I think we are ready to move on to our demonstration. So I'm going to stop my video because I'm going to turn to another screen.
Before you do, so I wanted to acknowledge that we have a lot of questions that I think you're
Sure.
going to answer for us, and so I just wanted to mention the kinds of things that we're getting right now about will all those funds be there? Will I see my internal grants? Will my project numbers be the same? And how does the data get there? Like, do I have to put it in there? Does someone have to put it in, or is it being converted? So I just
Yes.
get rolling.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me start with the conversion question and then we'll get right to the demonstration because I do plan to answer the rest of those questions during the demonstration. Well, we are going to swing across in from PeopleSoft into Workday approximately 5,000 awards and 17,000 grants. So it would take us a very long time to do that manual entry. So what we have is a team that we work with. It's a conversion team and a deployment team that works with my team. And we're just one of several groups on the enterprise project that are going to convert data and move that into the Workday system. We take the data that we have in PeopleSoft. We're going to take the first cut of data tomorrow night, actually, which would be all of the demographic values for your awards and grants. So that's things like the PIs and co-PIs, the sponsors, budgets, any special conditions that you have. We're going to pick up that information in 2 goes. So tomorrow night will be the first cut. Next Friday night will be the second. So my team will come on early Saturday morning and begin to validate that data as we move it and load it into Workday and ensure that the conversion is complete and correct. So that will happen in two stages, as I mentioned. And then after go live, and I'll say a little bit more about after go live at the end of the presentation, but we're going to spend 9 days bringing over the historical transactional or financial activity. So it has to happen in 2 different pieces, and we are part of one very large project. But that's a good question. Yes, so we're going to have a process for which it will be translated into the new characteristics, and then we will load it into Workday in large chunks. All right, I'm going to turn off my video right now because I need to turn to another screen. And as I am getting that screen up and ready, I want to give a big thank you to Dr. Ralph Bunchu. He is a professor in the Department of Physics, and I am going to be impersonating him today. So thank you so much. And can someone confirm, Eileen, can you let me know if you can see my screen?
That's it. There we go.
Great. So as I mentioned, I am impersonating Professor Bunchu today. And right now, I can do this because we are in what's called a test tenant, where we have test data and are practicing a great many things. This is not a feature that anybody on the enterprise team will be able to do after go live. It's just for the purposes of testing. Also, the data that you will be seeing today as we look at the dashboard is staged data. Just wanted to make it clear that although there may be some project values that are real, there may be some names that are real, the data is staged. When you log into Workday, you're going to be on what's called a landing page, which is right here. Each time that you log into Workday, you will come to a page just like this. I won't go into detail today, but down here with applications, you will have some ability after go live to personalize this in a few different ways. So more on that in later trainings. A couple of things that I want to point out to you before we go into the dashboard. First of all, the block O. If this is your first look at Workday, you can go to a number of features. You can go to some tasks that you need to do or approve. You can go into dashboards or reports. If you ever get lost and want to go back to the home page, you just need to press this block O. I like to call it my little red life preserver. We also have a search bar. I'm going to get to that in a moment. And we've been talking about your inbox in Workday. It's a lot like a cell phone. So if you move all the way to the right, you can see that you have a notification. You can hover over that. And this is notification that something that you're involved in has maybe completed. So if you've put in a spend authorization request, a travel request, and it's now approved, it would show up here in notifications. But if you have something that you need to do, it'll show up in your inbox. But again, a lot like a cell phone, it'll give you the number and the kind of things that you have. And if you go to this, you can go to your own profile. So something you may want to try out when you get into Workday for the first time. The search bar works a lot like Google in that you can put in a few letters and then press enter, and it will bring you a number of different options. What I would tell you, though, is that Workday is not nearly as forgiving as Google. You have to spell things correctly. If not, it will not return the data that you want. What I have done is put in the first few letters of principal for Principal Investigator Summary, which is the name of this dashboard. In Workday, a dashboard can have up to 6 tabs, and we now have 3 in the release 1 or our go live version of the Principal Investigator Summary. We're going to talk about continuous improvement later on in the presentation. But improvements. And if you don't have any OSP grants at this time, we're going to be getting to other features of this dashboard that you may find to that. The OSP grants, you can see that we have a lot of information that is similar to what you have in the current state PI portal. We have awards and the grant that goes with that award, a status, it can be ended or open. Anything that is closed, we will drop off of this report. So your grant value, sponsor, sponsored program officer, start and end date, principal investigators. I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. Budget, expenditures, encumbrance, the F&A encumbrance, and the budget remaining. And if we scroll to the right, we are using some conditional formatting to draw the eye to different things. So we've made sure that we had no money left here so that we could establish that this is what happens when you're out of funds or you're out of time. And also the fee code. Most everything is very easy to find in Workday. Fee code hides. So we decided to express that on one of these reports so that when you're selecting where you may want to appoint a technician or a graduate student or postdoc, when it comes to graduate students, you would definitely want to know where the fees would hit. Everything that's blue is drillable. I'm going to demonstrate that for you on another tab. Coming back to principal investigators, you'll see that we have a number of principal investigators right here. And you may be wondering, does Workday know the difference between the PI and the co-Is? And it absolutely does. But in release 1, for this specific report, we have a multi-instance issue that we'll be working to solve. And then we'll be able to break those roles apart in the report. But at Go Live, we will have everybody in one box. Moving down the first tab, we also have a My Tasks report. At Go Live, we will be pulling technical tasks, and those tasks will be pulled from the tasks that are assigned to each faculty member within OSP grants. So at this point, it would be mostly technical reports and maybe some other unusual reports that would be assigned to a faculty member. We do have some plans for additional phases to do an integration to bring in additional tabs. One of the ones that we would like to look into in about a year is bringing in IRB protocols or IACUC protocols that are looking to expire. But again, we've been testing the conditional formatting so that you would see if something got old that you would have this here. One thing that I would like to say about Go Live is that some of these tasks may look like this on your initial reports, because in current state, most of the time a faculty member submits their technical report to the sponsor, and the Office of Sponsored Programs is unaware that that has gone in. But this will help to foster that communication, and we can knock these tasks off of your report. Moving to detail, you see that we have a high-level budget versus actual here. What happens if I want to see additional detail about my grant? I go to the Grants Detail tab. I can select the time period. It defaults to current period. My preference is award life to date. I put in a grant work tag. And you'll see the 6 number here at the end. I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. And when I push OK, this will bring up detailed information about this particular grant. Again, we have staged data here so that we can test a number of things. The first report that it will bring up on this page is budget versus actuals by object class. That's your financials tab in the current state portal. It gives you budget versus actuals by object class. As I mentioned, what is an object class? This is one of the terms in Workday that we thought was a little bit odd. So I've put budget category next to this, and you'll recognize these as the standard budget categories you have today. And for your sponsor, it will have budget, expenses, encumbrances, and balance. We also do the same thing for cost share and for third-party expenses. Your personnel summary is very similar to what you have today. So we would have actuals and encumbrances. Tuition and fees will also appear here. And down at the bottom, non-personnel expenditure summary. So in current state, if something is entered today, a requisition, which would create an encumbrance, that requisition will not show up in the current state portal until tomorrow. It's an overnight cycle. In Workday, if a purchase order request or a requisition is approved now, when we refresh the page, it will appear. So you are looking at your grant work tag and you see that you have encumbrances or even expenditures. As I mentioned, anything that's blue is drillable. If you push the blue number, it will go straight to journal line detail. But if you use this little arrow to the side, which is what I like to do, we give you some options about how you can view that data. I think I want to look at this by supplier. So if I push supplier, it'll put that dimension into the encumbrances, and we can view the encumbrances by this supplier dimension. And we can see that we have these 3 encumbrances. So maybe you're wondering, what did I buy at Kroger? What did my graduate student buy at Kroger? You can press right into the journal line detail and just grab that, and you can make the screen as big as you want. And you'll see the spend category, which is a lot like an account code today, and it will show that you've purchased gift cards at Kroger. I'm going to go back to the initial landing page for the principal investigator summary. Now, you have to put the grant work tag in if you want to see grant detail. And I know that seems frustrating. I mentioned that we can drill anywhere that we see blue, but I've not made the grant work tag blue. There's not a lot to see here. We have a future state request of Workday and one that they are working on where I can do what's called deep linking. So the eventual goal, although we have no timeline on this, is that I would be able to link this tab to this grant and you would be able to press it and go there. But let's drill into the award. You may be wondering where your demographic data is. You can drill into the award and look at your summary, information about the sponsor, funding details, special conditions, just like today. These aren't changing. Your award credits. So where is the award allocation? And if you look at award lines, you would see expenditure allocation. And you can also look at grants. Remember earlier I told you that an award line is the beginning point for a grant. I like this view because it puts the grants on a card, basically the cards that roll down the side here, and you can look at each of them. And if you were looking for expenditure allocation, there it is. The interesting thing about this is it's where the sponsored program officers are entering all of this information today. So you're going to be able to see exactly where they're doing the work. The third tab that I'm going to move to is right in the middle here. It's called Faculty Financials. Christine mentioned that we're getting some real improvements here, and this is what we've talked to a number of faculty about. What's missing in your reporting today? And the benefit of having you come into Workday is being able to give you more information than we could in the past. We mentioned that internal grants, now forgive me here, but this is our naming convention for a lot of test data. But if you had internal seed grants, we would list them right here. And you can see that we're using the same functionality that we are for OSP grants. So you can look at your budgets, your expenditures and encumbrances and the remaining balance, but you also get some information like a start date and an end date. We can list principal investigators and co-PIs, and you can look at the status that you have. The one thing you'll notice is missing here is sponsored program officer. I do want to note that the Office of Sponsored Programs will be creating these grants for you and these awards, but they are not managing internal grants. Also, a word about procurement. One improvement that we have made is that on your OSP grants, we are bypassing service centers in the units and going straight to the Office of Sponsored Programs procurement group. With internal grants, we won't be doing that. We're using alternate hierarchies to tell the difference between internal grants and OSP grants so that it goes to the proper mechanism for procurement. Scrolling down to the second report on the page is other funding. And as Christine was mentioning, we are able to bring a report onto this dashboard. Let's say you have startup. So if Dr. Punshu had a $100,000 startup package, the budget could be here, actuals, encumbrances, and remaining balance. There are other types of funding that might be on a report like this, and that is something that is in the purview of the senior business officers, and they are working through which kinds of funding they'll be expressing on this page. But whereas we're using the principal investigator role to bring forward your internal grants, on other funding, we're going to be using the assignee. Each of you has an assignee work tag, and that's how we'll bring this information forward. And the final report that we're able to give, a lot of the faculty that we talked to were struggling with the fact that you can't see all of the people who report to you, even when you look on grants. You might have to scroll grant to grant to grant to look at them. And even then, if you don't have all of your people appointed to grants, they're not visible. So we have brought this report forward where we can look at people that are in your what's called supervisory org and where they are currently appointed. and where their default costing allocation is. Meaning, if you had grant funding for some of your direct reports, and that grant funding went away, they'll go to this default costing allocation. So we wanted to give you visibility into that. But you notice on the other page, we made sure that we had two different examples. So we have a group of people that report to the faculty member, but on the grant on the third page, there were a lot of people. These security roles that I talked about at the beginning, they've been a little bit of a challenge for us, but we needed to be sure that you could see all of the people on a grant, whether or not they report to you, but then all of your people, even if they don't have an appointment on a grant. So it's been quite a journey here, but I think we're getting close. We have some information over to the right-hand side. We heard some people ask if we could collect more policy information where it's easier to find and all in one place. We're going to go live with these 4 links. So if you needed information from OSP or from OSU Travel, these links take you outside of Workday. And what happens when you press it is that it opens up another tab and it takes you to the OSP. Well, it doesn't want to go to that site. There we go. So it opens up the pages for these areas. We have additional reports as well. I'm going to show you 2 of them today. We have an award payments and billing. This is something that many faculty wouldn't use on a daily basis, which is why we put it over on the reports tab. And you would need to enter an award. I think this would be the most useful if you had a clinical trial and you wanted to see what the invoices are, what amounts are due, when were they due, and are they paid or unpaid? So that's just one of the additional reports. We can also take you out so that you can see what your proposals are. Eileen, are there any questions before I keep going that you'd like me to answer?
Thank you for asking. Yes, so this is more or less to confirm this. So we had a question from Krista. If I'm a co-I on multiple grants with percent effort, particularly part of cores within PO1s, and I don't always get to see those grants in my PI portal, should I now be able to see all of those in Workday?
Yes. Yes, you will.
Where's
Now,
the emphasis?
yes, if they come onto your report, you would have to have a role for you to see, say there are 19 grants in the award and you're only the co-PI on 4 of them. Those 4 will come into your report, but you can dive into award information.
And could you describe the assignee tag for us?
Yes. So the foundation data model has a number of work tags. It's a lot like chart field string or the chart of accounts in PeopleSoft today. And the assignee work tag is a work tag that is it's made of your name and a number, and your departments will be telling you what these are. And that's a way for if you purchase something and put the assignee work tag there, they can track expenses. So if you were given a $50,000 retention package, and you can spend that on your research. If you put that assignee work tag there, it helps them to collect those expenses and you can see your commitment and the expenses together.
Great, thank you. I know that a couple people asked about that. I also know that we have some questions that you are going to be, I want to acknowledge that a number of people have asked some questions that I know are going to be covered in material we have coming up. So I don't want you to think that we're ignoring you. We will get to those. I did get this question earlier, and I just want to make you aware, Andrea, because I'm not sure where best to show it, but we had questions about knowing your grant number, and what you're putting on the screen right now will help this.
Yep.
part of this was about just knowing what tag to choose, but maybe a couple comments about where these get used or how they will be connected to the right other work tags as we do our transactions.
Sure. You know, there's a learning curve here, just like with PeopleSoft. So let me start with your 6 number. So you can see that I started typing this 6 number in. And that is a searchable number. This is your legacy system or PeopleSoft system grant number or project value in current state. We did not want you to lose this number, so you can still search by it. But grant IDs in Workday begin with a GR and have a 6-digit number attached to them. So during the conversion process, each one of your 6 values will get attached to a GR value. If I created a new grant for you on, say, January 12th, there won't be a 6 value, of course. We'll just give it this value. But for continuity and so that you could search going forward, we wanted to put this on here. That's also, incidentally, how we're figuring out if we got the data over into Workday correctly, because we do some join tables where we're looking at the data that we picked up from PeopleSoft in the query and translated and moved to Workday. And the translation tool, we're putting these two together, and this is our join point to make sure that all 110 of those data points is correct. How do you decide what goes on there? So there are some requirements for each kind of purchase. The first one would be a cost center. This is not going to be a lot different than you have today. You have to put an org down, and your departments will assist you in figuring out what that is. If you're doing a purchase yourself, or if people are helping you do this, there'll be a cost center. You would put in a fund value, and they'll be providing you with some information about this. And I mean your departments will assist you. But 590000 that you would put in today for an OSP purchase would be replaced with FD 520, which is the new fund. We have collapsed from thousands of funds to under 20. So this is going to become much simpler.
I do also want to add, because we've had several people ask about purchasing and approvals and how to do all of this, and that to emphasize that we do have a course called the Buying Experience, which talks about where fund values and grant values, work tags go, those kinds of things that have to do with the approval workflow and so on. And that I highly recommend that if you're finding that all a little bit overwhelming, that at this point, just make a note to look for the Buying Experience. That's going to help you a lot.
Right. And it's not a lot different than today. You absolutely have to have a cost center and a fund. And a lot of the additional work tags will default for you. Like if you put in a grant work tag, that GR 101417, it will default what's called a function value that's tied to the grant. So the system does a lot of the work for you. Additional questions, Eileen?
Oh, so many questions. I think go ahead and move on, and I'm going to collate a few more of these here.
All right. Well, I think that we have gone through everything that I had on the dashboard. So while you're getting questions together, I think I'm going to stop sharing and turn my video back on. One thing that's important to remember, this is very targeted. What we've developed, the dashboard is targeted towards faculty members. And you may be wondering, if you have grants managers or cost center managers in your unit, how are they going to know what you're seeing? We did do 2 sessions in the last 2 weeks for grants administrators, and a lot of the reports that you saw on the PI dashboard will be available for them as well. So they'll be able to have some continuity and be able to understand what you're saying when you are telling them what you're seeing on your dashboard. So that's a very important thing that's been designed. And as Christine mentioned, we also have PI portal available to us. We do think that a lot of folks will want to use those together until we cross that bridge and are ready to move full-time to Workday reporting. It's grants is very important. It's a very important field, and we have to make sure that we have the information available that you need.
Let's talk a little bit more about approvals, because I do see a couple of
Mm,
questions on that. So we've had a couple of possible scenarios spelled out. One is I have someone in the lab that makes a purchase. As the PI, do I need to make that approval?
You do not need to make that approval. And what will be happening a couple of weeks after go live when the integrations are up and running is you will receive a weekly email that is a digest of all purchasing requests that have occurred on any of your grants. So you'll be able to see it all together once a week.
Great. Um, the other related question that we had is about travel and purchasing in addition. So we talked just now about approvals, but what about initiating those things? Does a PI have to, do they do their own? Or is there someone who can help them with that?
You can do either. So each unit will be handling this by communicating with you who can help you, but you can also do it yourself. I've done a lot of testing in the system, and I'll be honest with you, in PeopleSoft, I didn't do any of this for myself. I didn't do any of my purchases, but it's pretty easy. And the new carts for buying things it's a lot simpler than it is today in the auxiliary applications that are outside of PeopleSoft, and it's a lot easier than PeopleSoft. So you have a choice.
As someone had asked, will the graduate assistants, research assistants be trained to do things like processing purchase orders, for example?
I think that is at the discretion of the unit.
I also want to acknowledge a number of people have asked about, I mean, that there is a lot here. There's a ton here to learn. Yeah. Finding ways to get written instructions, guides, that kind of thing. I want to acknowledge that I have half a dozen of those kinds of questions. And I am going to make sure that everyone sees the link at the end where you can go to get those, because there are plenty of those that are available right now and will continue to be built upon as well. So now to tie together a few others, when I say I'm collating these, there's so many to put together. I'd like to talk through kind of like from pre-award to actively spending on a grant. Mm-hmm. Someone had asked, for example, will I get a pre-award number? Who puts this in? Could you talk through a little bit about that process and the handoffs and what that looks like as we're working through Workday?
Oh gosh, Christine, I'm assuming they're meaning preliminary project. That's how I'm anticipating that this is, and that's still a thing. So right. Yes, you can get a preliminary project in Workday.
Good.
And you'll still work with the sponsored program officer to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And just a little bit of a clarification, because we do have, because of this new language about grants and the structure, we talked about how we have a umbrella award, and then we have sub awards to that, which are now those the award lines. Sorry, not sub awards. Yep. That was bad. Award lines within that award that each is a grant to someone. It creates a grant number that you're using. Mm-hmm. How is it that an award can have multiple grants? Isn't a grant an award, says somebody.
Yeah, this is that terminology thing I was talking about.
Yeah.
So if you think about a notice of award or a grant that comes from your sponsor, so the National Institutes of Health, you think of that as a grant, it's an award. And then the grants are the work tags for spend that we will make under that. So it might just be one grant. But if we have to hold money separately, like there's no carry forward without permission from year to year, and you have to have a new, like today, you would get a new project value year to year. Just think about those grants as what you have today as projects. But yes, it's hard for me. Sometimes I say grant and I mean award, and I'll do that for the rest of my life probably, but.
Yes, exactly. Well, good fundamentals. I do want to acknowledge we're down to the last couple. I'm doing a lot of acknowledging. I'm going to acknowledge that we are down to the last couple of minutes here, and I want to make sure we share some closing thoughts on PI Portal, because somebody had asked about access to previous information, and I thought, well, PI Portal sounds like the right place to start with that.
Yeah, there'll be two. So the PeopleSoft, as we've done a lot of talking today about chart of accounts and work tags. They're not the same, and we cannot make an apple into a pineapple. So the historical PI portal will remain, and that's where you can find detailed information about your awards. And you can also find detailed information beginning January 1st in the retrofit PI portal. That PI portal will look a lot like the one you have right now, but we do have to change it so that the financial information in Workday format can flow in.
Probably also worth mentioning that the reporting in PeopleSoft, things like historical e-requests, things that are there, we will still be able to pull information from this. It doesn't go away just like magically on that day.
No, not on that day. I believe that those auxiliary applications will be up until June 30th at least. And that information will be maintained permanently. I mean, we have to have those source documents. It just won't be as easy to access when those systems go away. But yes, we will have the ability to get that information.
Great. Now, let's talk about timing.
Timing. So the gold stars, let's talk about those quickly. PeopleSoft, as you may or may not know, has not been upgraded since 2004, not PeopleSoft Financials. When I've mentioned today that we have our go live or our launch PI dashboard, we will have a number of opportunities to improve this for you in the coming years. I just wanted to mention that each October and March, we get our large upgrades from Workday. So twice a year, we're going to get a lot of new functionality, and every Friday night we get small fixes. But the really important date that you see there is January 20th, 2021. If you want your balances in Workday, we have to convert the historical data first. So I mentioned that later on, the grants team would be working a 9-day stretch to bring that financial information over, and that'll be about the 9th to the 19th of January. So things aren't going to look quite right for the first few days until we get that information over and validated. So January 20th is going to be a good day. So we will be able to pick up the new data then.
And we had a question from some folks about when things like purchasing, for example, would be available. So
January
just to
7th.
point out, January 7th is the day when all those new transactions will be available to you. So
yes,
very good. Okay, we are out of time. I want to respect everybody's schedule and get us out the door virtually. So I want to thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Christine, for all of your help today and for answering all of our questions. I know that we did not get to all of the questions, and I know, Christine, we are sending emails on a regular basis to the community. I would just encourage everybody, please keep reading, keep watching for them, because we will try to follow up on some of the themes that we've seen and answer some of the particulars. I have on the screen the Administrative Resource Center link. This is your lifeline. Use it. Go and take a look. I would encourage you to think about the questions that you're trying to answer when you go there as questions about purchasing or hiring or payroll. Those kinds of questions will lead you to the right material. When you're spending on a grant, there's some peculiarities, but clearly the basic processes are there and they're explained in those materials. So please do take a look for that. Also, I encourage you to go back to Workday. If you type if you type Workday in the search on Buckeye Learn, you will be presented with a big laundry list of everything you could ever possibly want to learn. And a lot of you had great questions about processes that we weren't going to be able to cover in this hour. There are plenty of people out there with more material, and those classes will help you a lot and point you in the right direction to get you some help. We will be publicizing a helpline later this month that will be open once we go live. And we'll have a link out there so that you can find Workday when that happens. So I appreciate everybody's attendance and their attention and their great questions. And we will post this roughly the end of next week for you to revisit as often as you'd like. It'll be available in Buckeye Learn under the name of the course that you took today. So please feel free to revisit it and share that it will be available with others. And with that, I think we are done for the day. Thank you very much. Have a great day.